The hospital room was quiet, too quiet for comfort. The pale dim light from the overhead bulb flickered intermittently as Rhea nervously wiped her hands on the corners of her uniform. She had always been the quiet, reserved type, working as a nurse in the human-alien outreach program. But today felt different. The alien warrior she was assigned to care for was no ordinary patient. His name was Kale, a tall figure with sharp, almost regal features, though his race was a mystery. He had been brought in after a deadly skirmish on a distant planet. The battle had left him gravely injured, and the medical team had barely managed to stabilize him. His strange alien physiology was something even the best human doctors had trouble understanding. Rhea was left alone in the sterile room with him. Her task simple enough: clean his wounds and monitor his condition. Yet the tension in the room was palpable, as if the very air held its breath, waiting for something. Her fingers trembled as she moved to the edge of the bed. The warrior was unconscious, his eyes closed, his chest rising and falling in slow, measured breaths. The blanket that covered him was pulled up to his chest, hiding the deep gashes that marred his skin. It was a strange sight. This powerful, battle-worn being reduced to a helpless figure lying motionless in front of her. But there was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Rhea gently lifted the blanket to begin her work. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, not because of fear, but because of the strange feeling that washed over her. She glanced down, her hands pausing midair as something moved beneath the blanket. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but there. Something shifted. Rhea's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, her mind struggling to make sense of what she had seen. She was sure of it. There was movement under the blanket. Her mind raced, but she did her best to remain calm. Maybe it was just a reflex from his injuries. Yet a tiny part of her wondered if there was something more to this alien warrior than she had been told. She decided to push aside her growing unease and continued her task. As she gently cleaned his wounds, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Something in the room that wasn't quite right. And then it happened again. The movement beneath the blanket was no longer subtle. It was distinct now, something alive, shifting. Rhea froze. Her pulse quickened. Was this part of his healing process? Or was it something more dangerous, something that even the medics hadn't warned her about? Without thinking, her eyes shot to Kale's face, hoping for some sign, some indication that he was waking up. But his face remained still, emotionless. He looked like he was still in a deep, almost unnatural slumber. Rhea's hands shook as she reached for the blanket, this time with caution. She pulled it back just enough to see what was underneath. What she saw sent a chill down her spine. A strange, pulsating shape began to emerge beneath the fabric, dark and alien, unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was not a part of Kale's body, nor was it something that should have been there. For a moment, Rhea could only stare at it in disbelief. The creature beneath the blanket stirred again, larger now, its movement unmistakably purposeful, and then the blanket was pulled further back as a small coiled form shot up into the air. Rhea gasped in shock, stepping back, almost tripping over her own feet. The creature, a slimy, bioluminescent worm-like thing, hissed in a low, almost guttural sound. Rhea's heart was in her throat as she looked at the alien, confused and terrified. What was this thing, and why had it been hidden beneath Kale's blanket? Her mind raced with questions, but before she could react further, a voice broke the silence. "Do not be alarmed, human." Kale's voice rumbled from the bed. His eyes, once closed, opened with a strange intensity. "It is part of me." The creature, still wriggling, seemed to settle at his side, its form pulsating as if in sync with his breathing. Kale's gaze remained fixed on Rhea, an unreadable expression crossing his face. Rhea's mouth went dry. Part of him? What did that mean? Was it some sort of healing mechanism? Or was it something far more dangerous, something only Kale understood? She tried to steady her breath, but her mind was spinning with 1,000 possibilities. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the creature now calmly resting next to Kale. "It is my companion, my bond," Kale said, his voice steady, but heavy with meaning. "It has been with me since birth, a part of my existence." Rhea couldn't help but wonder if she had just uncovered something far more complicated than she had ever imagined. Rhea stood motionless, her eyes glued to the creature that lay beside Kale. She had always been trained to remain calm in high-stress situations, but nothing in her training had prepared her for something like this. The small creature, almost translucent, seemed to pulse with life, its glowing body shifting with every beat of Kale's heart. The hospital room, once a place of calm, now felt suffocating, filled with an air of mystery and danger that Rhea couldn't shake. The warmth from the small creature's glow illuminated Kale's face, casting strange shadows that made his features look almost alien. Kale, still lying there, watching her closely, spoke again. "You must not be afraid. This bonded is part of my species' way of life. It is a companion, a guide. We do not survive without it." Rhea's mind raced. She had heard of symbiotic relationships between humans and certain species, but nothing like this. There were rumors of alien races with strange parasitic companions, but she had dismissed them as myths. Now standing in front of her was the undeniable proof that something far stranger was at play. "I don't understand," Rhea said, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to sound calm. "What do you mean it's part of you? Why is it here?" Kale's gaze softened as if he understood her fear. "It is not a parasite, not a threat. It is a connection, our bond. My people, the Vokari, live alongside it, rely on it. We are never separate." Rhea's eyes flicked between Kale and the creature. It was still there, glowing softly as though it knew it was being watched. The way it coiled and uncoiled, almost in rhythm with Kale's breathing, only deepened Rhea's curiosity. "So, it has been with you since birth?" Rhea asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Kyle replied, nodding slowly. "It feeds on the energy of our body, and in return it protects us. It strengthens our minds, shields us from certain weaknesses. Without it, we would not survive long in this universe." Rhea took a hesitant step closer, still wary of the creature but more intrigued than afraid now. She couldn't help but wonder how something so small could offer such protection. The creature didn't look like much, almost fragile, with translucent skin and glowing tendrils, but its presence was undeniable. And Kyle, a powerful and fearsome warrior, had been living with it for as long as he could remember. It made her realize how much she didn't know about the alien species she had been assigned to care for. "Does it do anything else?" Rhea asked, her voice trembling slightly as she knelt beside the bed. Kyle's eyes darkened, his expression becoming more serious. "It can sense danger. It can communicate with me in ways no human would understand. But most importantly, it connects to my mind and emotions. It senses when I am hurt, when I am in pain. It is part of my healing process." Rhea nodded slowly, trying to make sense of everything he was telling her. She had seen many strange things in her line of work, but nothing like this. There were stories, of course, of strange alien technologies and abilities, but this felt too personal, too intimate. The creature suddenly shifted again, its glowing body pulsing faster. Rhea noticed the way it seemed to react to her presence, as if it could sense her unease. She flinched when it stretched one of its tendrils toward her hand, the soft, almost liquid-like appendage brushing against her skin. A chill ran up her spine. She didn't know if it was the creature itself or the look in Kale's eyes as he observed the interaction. He seemed to be studying her carefully, as if waiting for something. "What does it want?" she asked, trying to sound confident, though the question echoed in her mind with more urgency than she wanted to admit. "It doesn't want anything," Kale replied, though there was a hidden meaning in his words. "It only reacts to my feelings." "And yours?" Rhea blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. Her feelings? Did he mean the creature could sense her emotions too? Was this part of the alien bond? Before she could respond, the creature's tendrils withdrew and it coiled back beside Kale, settling quietly as though nothing had happened. The tension in the room lifted slightly, but the unanswered questions only grew heavier. "Why am I here?" Rhea asked, her voice shaking as she tried to focus. "What exactly is my role in all of this? Am I just here to clean your wounds, or is there something more? Something more?" Kale studied her for a long moment, his intense gaze never leaving her face. "You are here to understand." To learn? Rhea felt a knot form in her stomach. Was he suggesting that she was meant to be part of something much bigger than a simple medical task? Was she being drawn into something she wasn't prepared for? And then, without warning, Kale's voice dropped to a low whisper. "They will come for me. The ones who want to control my people. The ones who want the bond." Rhea froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The room seemed to close in on her as she tried to process what Kyle had just said. The bond? Was it more than just a connection between him and the creature? Before she could speak, the door to the room slammed open with a violent force. Rhea's breath caught in her throat as the door crashed open, the sound echoing in the sterile room like a warning. A group of figures stormed in, their dark, uniformed silhouettes cutting through the pale light. Ria's heart skipped a beat. These weren't the usual medical staff or security officers. These were armed strangers, their faces hidden behind helmets, their presence exuding authority and menace. Cale's eyes flicked toward the door, his body tensing, the air around him thickening with anticipation. The creature beside him shifted as well, its tendrils writhing restlessly. Ria could feel the room's temperature drop, the weight of danger pressing in on her. "Who are they?" Ria asked, her voice barely a whisper, but her eyes locked on the intruders, trying to make sense of what was happening. "They are not here for me," Kyle answered quietly, his gaze still focused on the strangers. "They are here for the bond, and they will stop at nothing to get it." Ria's stomach churned with a mixture of fear and confusion. The bond? Was Kale talking about the strange creature, or was there something more to it? What did these people want with him? With the bond? As the intruders closed in, one of them, a tall, imposing figure, stepped forward. His armor gleamed with a dark metallic sheen, and his helmet hid any trace of emotion. But the coldness in his voice made it clear they weren't here to negotiate. "Kyle, the Vokari warrior, we have come to take what is ours," the man said, his voice devoid of any empathy. "Release the bond. Surrender it to us." Ria's blood ran cold. She had no idea who these people were, but their words were clear. They weren't here for diplomacy. They were here for something far more dangerous. Kale didn't move, his eyes narrowing as he faced the intruder. "You do not understand what you are asking for," Kale said, his voice low and dangerous. "This bond is not something you can control. It is part of who I am, part of my people. It is not a weapon. It is not a tool." The leader of the group let out a dry laugh, his tone dripping with disdain. "Everything can be controlled, Kale. Everything can be bent to our will. Your people are nothing more than tools, and we intend to make full use of what you've kept hidden." Ria's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the tension building, the danger of the situation closing in. She had no idea what they were talking about, but she knew this was bad. Worse than anything she could have imagined. Kale's hand shifted slightly, his fingers curling into a fist as the creature at his side reacted again, its glowing tendrils twitching in sync with his movements. There was a sudden tension in the air, like the calm before a storm, and Ria could feel the heat of the moment in her very bones. "Stay back," Kyle warned, his voice now like a growl, low and filled with authority. "This bond is not for you to take. You do not have the strength to control it." The intruder didn't flinch, his menacing stance unwavering. "Then we will take you as well, if that is what it takes." Before Kale could respond, the leader motioned to his team, and in an instant they began to move forward, their weapons raised and aimed at Kyle. The sight of the dark, lethal weaponry sent a chill down Ria's spine. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, but something deeper inside her kept her rooted to the spot. Kale's eyes flicked to Ria, his gaze piercing. "Get back," he ordered, his tone sharp. "This is not your fight." Ria's pulse raced as the room seemed to grow smaller, the walls closing in on her. She didn't know if she should listen to him and run or stay and risk getting caught in whatever was about to unfold. She had no weapons. She was no warrior. She was a nurse, a simple caretaker. But as the group advanced, Ria's gaze shifted to Kale once more. He was already preparing for something, his body coiling with barely contained power, his alien bond stirring with energy. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could feel the tension in the air, like the electric charge before a storm. The leader of the group stepped forward, his hand extended toward Kale, his fingers curling as if grabbing hold of something invisible. Ria felt a sudden chill on her skin, and the room seemed to pulse with an energy that wasn't from the lights or the temperature. It was a force, an unseen power. "No," Ria shouted, her instincts kicking in as she stepped forward. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Before she could react any further, Kale raised his arm, and in that instant, the room exploded with energy. The creature at his side let out a loud, hissing sound, its tendrils extending rapidly as it shot forward, glowing brighter than before. The air around it seemed to warp, and Ria instinctively stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. The warriors didn't seem to understand the danger, but they quickly learned. Kale's bond surged with power, a surge so intense it made the lights flicker, and the air hum with raw energy. The intruders took a step back, shocked by the unexpected force. Their weapons faltered, their stance unsteady, as Kale's presence seemed to become a whirlwind of raw energy, too overwhelming to contain. But Rhea wasn't prepared for the next moment. Before she could even react, Kale's voice echoed in her mind, a forceful command she could feel deep within her soul. "Run," he commanded, his voice like thunder, and just like that, Rhea did. Rhea didn't think. She didn't have time to think. Her legs moved faster than her mind, her body reacting to Kale's command as if her life depended on it because it did. The moment she turned, the room seemed to explode with sound. The bright lights overhead flickered and hummed, their energy zapping and sparking as Kale's bond surged through the air. The walls seemed to tremble and the temperature shot up, becoming unbearably hot. Rhea's breath hitched as she stumbled forward, her mind racing with fear and confusion. Behind her, Kyle's power was undeniable, radiating like an invisible force, pushing back against the intruders. The creature at his side glowed brighter than ever before, its tendrils whipping through the air like serpents. Rhea barely heard the muffled yells of the intruders as they scrambled, their weapons faltering in the presence of Kale's overwhelming force. But she didn't stop to watch. She ran. The corridor outside the room stretched on endlessly, the harsh, sterile walls reflecting the sound of her hurried footsteps. She rounded corners, moving as fast as her legs could carry her. But the dread in her chest only grew heavier with each passing second. The situation was spiraling out of control. Rhea's heart thudded in her chest louder than her breath. She had no idea what was happening, but it was clear now that her simple assignment had turned into something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Kyle, the alien warrior with the strange, glowing creature by his side, wasn't just a patient. He was a key to something powerful, something the intruders were willing to kill for. Rhea rounded another corner, her mind still spinning. What had Kale meant when he said they would come for him? Who were those people, and why were they so desperate to get their hands on the bond? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy boots thudding behind her. Rhea's heart sank. They were already following her. The intruders were closing in, their mission clear: capture Kale and take the bond. But Rhea wasn't going to let them get away with it. She couldn't just run. She had to do something. Her gaze darted around, searching for an exit. There was no time to think. She had to find a way to stop them, even if just for a moment. The entrance was ahead, but it was heavily guarded. The security team stationed there hadn't been prepared for the situation either. As Rhea neared the exit, she heard the heavy thud of boots drawing closer. Panic set in. They were right behind her. She could almost feel the heat of their pursuit. Just as she was about to reach the exit, a blast of light hit the wall beside her, sending her sprawling to the ground. She gasped as the shockwave of energy from the weapon made her ears ring. She could hear the voices of the intruders now yelling commands, and the sound of metal clashing against metal. Rhea's body ached, but she forced herself to her feet, her hands scraping against the floor as she pushed herself up. She glanced over her shoulder and saw one of the intruders coming at her, weapon raised. She didn't hesitate this time. She grabbed the nearest object, an old medical cart, and swung it with all her strength, knocking the assailant off balance. The moment's distraction gave her a few precious seconds. She didn't wait to see if he was getting up. Rhea sprinted through the door and into the chaos outside. The bright lights of the emergency hall blinded her momentarily. But she didn't stop. Outside, the hallway was just as chaotic, with alarms blaring and officers running past her, trying to figure out what had happened. But none of them knew the full story. None of them knew about Kale, about the bond, about the danger they were all in. Rhea pushed through the crowd, her heart racing as she searched for an escape route. Her mind was still struggling to comprehend what she had just witnessed, but she knew one thing for sure. Kale wasn't safe, and neither was she. As she rounded another corner, she skidded to a stop. Ahead, she saw Kale standing alone in the hallway. His eyes locked onto hers, his face serious, but there was something else there. A quiet understanding. "They will keep coming for me," Kyle said, his voice low and heavy with determination. "But we must leave now." Rhea didn't hesitate. She knew now that whatever was going on, she was part of it. There was no turning back. "Where do we go?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly but filled with urgency. Kyle looked down the hallway, his gaze sharp and calculating. "I have a ship. It is hidden. We can escape, but we need to move fast." Rhea nodded, swallowing hard. As much as she wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, she knew that now wasn't the time. She had to trust him. If she didn't, they wouldn't survive the next few minutes. Together, they sprinted down the hallway, weaving through the crowd. Rhea could feel the heat of the pursuit closing in, but they couldn't stop. She was in too deep now. Finally, Kale led her to a secure, hidden elevator at the end of a dimly lit corridor. As the doors slid open, Kale stepped inside first, and Rhea followed quickly, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on her chest. With a soft hum, the elevator descended and Rhea could feel the ground beneath her feet shift. Her heart pounded in her ears, but she didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. When the elevator doors opened again, she was met with a quiet, isolated hangar. A sleek alien ship stood waiting for them, its dark surface gleaming under the low lights. The creature beside Kale had settled down, its tendrils coiling gently as if resting. But Rhea knew that the calm was only temporary. Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Once we take off, there is no going back." Rhea nodded silently. Whatever they were about to face, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. The hum of the alien ship filled the cramped cockpit, its strange mechanical sounds unfamiliar yet oddly comforting. Rhea sat in the seat beside Kale, her hands gripping the armrests tightly as the ship's systems powered up around her. The smooth, sleek interior felt more like a living organism than a machine, its surfaces pulsating with a subtle, warm glow that reflected the alien nature of the vessel. Kale sat in front of her, his fingers flying across the ship's control panel with the precision of someone who had flown this ship 1,000 times before. Rhea could feel the ship begin to vibrate as the engines roared to life, the quiet thrum of power underneath her feet sending a shiver up her spine. She knew they were moving, but everything outside the cockpit was shrouded in darkness. The hangar they had just left was already a distant memory, and as the ship's speed increased, the faint glow of the planet's surface faded away, leaving nothing but the void of space surrounding them. Her heart still raced from the escape. Her mind had barely caught up with what had just happened. They had run, they had fought, and now they were leaving everything behind. The hospital, the intruders, the life she had known. It was all gone. "Kyle," she said, her voice hesitant. She didn't know what else to say. "What exactly is going on? What is the bond? Why do they want it so badly?" Kale's fingers hesitated over the control panel, and for a moment Rhea thought he might not answer her. His gaze was fixed ahead, his face tense. She could see the weight of the world on his shoulders, even though he didn't show it outwardly. He was a warrior. He had survived far worse than this, but she could feel the burden in his silence. "The bond is not just a connection," Kale said, his voice quiet but steady. "It is a source of power, something that my people, the Vocari, have carried with us for millennia. It is what allows us to survive, to thrive in the harshest environments. It gives us strength, clarity, and resilience. But it is also dangerous." Rhea leaned forward, trying to understand. "Dangerous how?" Kale's eyes flicked to her, his face momentarily shadowed with something darker. "The bond is not something that can be easily controlled. It connects to the core of our being, and if misused, it can destroy everything. It is the reason my people have been hunted for centuries." Rhea swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. She had thought she was just helping an injured alien warrior, but now she realized she was caught in the middle of something far bigger than herself. The bond wasn't just a strange creature, it was a key to something powerful, something dangerous, and there were people willing to do anything to control it. "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Rhea asked, her voice sharp with frustration. Kale's gaze softened, though there was still a flicker of something guarded in his eyes. "I didn't want you to be involved. I didn't want to put you in danger." Rhea's heart clenched. She had been assigned to take care of him, to help him heal, and in doing so she had been drawn into a war she didn't understand. But now that she was here, now that she knew the truth, there was no going back. "You don't get to decide that," she said, her voice more firm than she intended. "I'm already involved. You said it yourself, I'm part of this now." Kale was silent for a moment, and for the first time Rhea saw a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You're right," he said softly. "You are part of this, whether you want to be or not." Rhea's mind raced as she processed everything. The bond, the intruders, Kale's people, the Vocari. What had they meant when they said everything could be controlled? What had Kale meant when he said they had been hunted for centuries? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden lurch. The ship jolted as it broke through the atmosphere, shooting out into the cold expanse of space. The stars outside the cockpit window stretched into long lines as they gained speed, their light flickering like tiny diamonds in the endless black. Kale adjusted the ship's trajectory, his focus returning to the controls. We are heading to a safe place. It is an old hideout. The only one left. Ria's heart skipped a beat. Safe? From who? From what? Do you think we're safe? She asked quietly. Kyle's voice was low, but there was a grim determination in it. For now. But that won't last long. Ria didn't need to ask what he meant. She already knew. They were running, but they wouldn't be able to outrun their pursuers forever. Whoever those intruders were, they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. And as much as she hated to admit it, she knew she was a part of the target now. Will we be able to hide? She asked, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Kale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her with a steady gaze, his alien eyes filled with something unreadable. We will fight if we have to. We will protect the bond. Ria nodded, trying to suppress the growing fear in her chest. And the creature? The one that... The bond? Kale's expression softened. It will guide us. It will protect us. It is stronger than you think. Ria wasn't sure if she believed him. She wasn't sure about anything anymore. All she knew was that the bond, this strange glowing creature, was at the center of everything. And now, it was her responsibility too. The ship accelerated, moving farther and farther away from everything Ria had known. But as she glanced out the window, she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't escaping. They were only running towards something even darker, and the danger was closing in faster than she realized. The hum of the ship's engines provided a constant background noise, a reminder that they were no longer on familiar ground. Ria sat in her seat, staring out into the vast emptiness of space, trying to make sense of the chaos that had overtaken her life in the past few hours. She had been a nurse assigned to take care of an alien patient, but now she was caught in the middle of a battle for something much bigger. The bond, the strange glowing creature that Kale called a companion, and the intruders who were determined to control it. The more she thought about it, the more questions she had. And as the ship drifted through the endless darkness, she couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of fear deep in her gut. Were they really safe here, in this hidden outpost Kale had mentioned? Or was it just another temporary hiding place before the next wave of enemies arrived? Kale sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the display in front of him, his hands steady as he navigated the ship through the dark expanse. The room was silent except for the soft sounds of the ship's systems running smoothly. Ria had no idea where they were going or how long it would take to get there. She had never been in space before, never imagined that she'd be running for her life with an alien warrior, a creature with unknown powers and a bunch of armed strangers hot on their trail. Suddenly, Kale spoke, his voice breaking the silence. The bond, Ria, it is not just an artifact of my people. It is the key to something much greater. Greater. Ria turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise. She had known there was more to the story, but this was the first time Kale had been willing to speak openly about it. She leaned forward, her voice filled with urgency. What do you mean? What is it the key to? Kale's expression was unreadable as he met her gaze. The bond is not just a symbiotic relationship between myself and the creature. It is the anchor that holds my people's civilization together. It is what gives us strength, yes, but it is also what keeps us in check. If it were to fall into the wrong hands. He trailed off, his voice heavy with meaning. Ria could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. If it were to fall into the wrong hands, what? She asked, her voice tight with the growing sense of danger. Kyle took a deep breath, his hand brushing against the control panel in front of him. It could destroy everything. Not just my people, but every species that relies on the bond. The energy it holds is unlike anything the universe has ever seen. It can heal, protect, and even alter the fabric of reality itself. Ria blinked, struggling to understand the magnitude of what he was saying. She had been told the bond was important, but this was something far beyond what she had imagined. Alter the fabric of reality? She repeated, her voice disbelieving. Kale nodded solemnly. Yes, the bond is a source of untapped power. If misused, it could unravel entire systems, shift the balance of space, and tear apart the very fabric of life. It's why my people have kept it hidden for so long, but now it is in danger. Ria could hardly wrap her mind around it. She had known that the bond was powerful, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. She felt a deep sense of responsibility settle in her chest. This was no longer just about her or Kale. This was about the fate of an entire galaxy. The ship's engines hummed softly, but Rhea barely noticed the sound anymore. Her mind was racing. But if it's so powerful, why hasn't anyone been able to take it before? She asked. Why now? Cale's gaze darkened, his voice dropping to a low whisper. Because they finally found out where we are. For centuries, my people have been in hiding. We have lived in the shadows, avoiding detection by the ones who would seek to exploit the bond. But now there are factions, dark organizations, and powerful empires that know we are vulnerable. And they are hunting us down. Rhea's stomach churned. And they'll keep coming. Won't they? Cale nodded. Yes, they won't stop until they have what they want. And they will destroy everything in their path to get it. Rhea closed her eyes, the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She had been thrust into something far bigger than she could have ever imagined. She had thought she was just helping an injured alien. But now she was part of a war. One that was not only about survival, but about control of an ancient power that could shape the future of the universe. What can we do? Rhea asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How can we stop them? Cale turned his gaze to her, his expression hardening with resolve. We don't have much time. We need to find the others, those who still believe in protecting the bond. The ones who have been in hiding, just like my people. Only then can we fight back. Only then can we keep the bond safe. Rhea nodded, her mind already whirling with plans. So we're not just running anymore. We're going to fight? Cale's eyes locked with hers, filled with a fierce determination. We are, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect the bond. Rhea felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to run anymore. She was going to fight. And she would stand by Cale no matter what came next. The stars outside the ship's viewport streaked by in long glowing lines, marking the passage of time as Cale piloted them deeper into the unknown. Rhea sat quietly in her seat, her mind still reeling from the conversation they'd just had. The weight of everything, the bond, the hunt, the stakes, had finally begun to settle fully on her shoulders. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was a participant in a fight for the survival of not just one species, but the balance of the entire galaxy. The silence between her and Kyle was thick with unspoken thoughts. He focused on the ship's systems, his brow furrowed in concentration, but Rhea could tell he was still processing the same thoughts she was. The intruders weren't the only ones chasing them now. There were others, dark forces, factions, empires who knew exactly what the bond was capable of and would stop at nothing to claim it. Cale, Rhea said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension. Who are these people? The ones after the bond? What do they want with it? Cale didn't immediately respond, his fingers still moving deftly over the ship's controls. It was clear he was avoiding the question, but Rhea wasn't about to let it go.
She needed to understand more if she was going to help him, and herself survive what was coming. The ones who came after us. Cale finally spoke.
His voice laced with a hint of disdain. Are the Zilun, a mercenary faction. They work for whoever pays the highest price. They've been hunting my people for decades looking for the bond. They know its power, but they don't understand it. They think they can control it. Bend it to their will. Rhea frowned, trying to wrap her mind around the idea of a group of mercenaries being able to manipulate such an ancient, complex force. But they can't, right? The bond. It's not something that can be controlled like that? Cale's eyes flicked to her, his gaze sharp and pained. They'll try. And they'll fail. But in the process, they'll destroy everything in their path. My people, your people, the entire galaxy. Rhea shuddered. She had no idea how to respond. She had only just learned about the bond's power, and already it felt like the universe was on the verge of collapse because of it. Her world had shifted entirely, and she was no longer just an observer. She was part of the fight for survival. We need to find the others, Kyle continued, his voice harder now. The ones who understand the bond. They've been in hiding for years. They're the only ones who can help us. Rhea nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure where to start. Where do we go now? How do we find them? Cale's face was set with resolve. I know where to look, but it won't be easy. The Zilun will be tracking us, and we'll have to move carefully. Time is not on our side. Rhea swallowed, the realization sinking in that there was no turning back. They were heading into the heart of danger, and there was no guarantee they would make it out alive. But she couldn't walk away now. She had already stepped into this world, and Cale had made it clear. This was about more than just saving him. It was about saving everything. The ship's systems beeped softly and Kale's attention snapped back to the controls. "We're approaching the first safe point," he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that Rhea could feel deep in her bones. "We'll land there, but we'll need to be quick. Once the Zilun find us, we'll be in constant motion." Rhea nodded, her heart pounding with anticipation. The idea of hiding out in some distant location didn't sound appealing, but she understood it was their only option. They needed to regroup, gather more allies, and figure out how to stop the mercenaries from getting their hands on the bond. As the ship descended into a remote, barren moon, Rhea felt the familiar weight of uncertainty press down on her once again. What were they walking into? Who would they meet at this hidden outpost? The unknown stretched ahead of them, its shadow looming over everything. The ship touched down with a soft jolt, and Kyle powered down the engines. The low hum of the systems faded as the hatch opened, revealing the stark, desolate landscape outside. The air was thin, almost dry, but Rhea could feel the coolness of the moon's atmosphere seep in through the ship's small port. Kale stood and moved toward the exit, his steps measured, his focus intense. "Stay close, Rhea," he said. "This place isn't as safe as it seems." She followed him without hesitation, her pulse racing as they stepped into the unknown. The barren landscape stretched out before them, dust swirling in the air, and the distant horizon seemed to mock the idea of safety. But Kale moved confidently, and Rhea couldn't help but trust his instincts. The hidden outpost was a small fortified station, abandoned by most. But Kale led her through its narrow corridors with familiarity, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the space as if expecting trouble. Rhea stayed close, trying to keep up with his quick pace, the silence of the place unsettling her. They reached a locked door at the end of the hall. Kale punched in a code, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside, the room was dimly lit, but there were signs of life: old, worn equipment, maps scattered across tables, and several alien figures moving around in the shadows. Kale nodded to one of them, a tall being with strange insect-like features. "These are the ones who will help us," Kale said, his voice grim but with a note of hope. "They know what's at stake." Rhea didn't need to ask any more questions. The moment had arrived. They were not alone anymore, and the fight for the bond had just begun.